silence in the Spencer estate was deceptive, the kind that came not from peace, but from exhaustion. The kind that lingered after every voice had been raised, after every truth had been weaponized, after every heart had been pushed too far. Katie Logan stood by the wide glass window, watching the Pacific's gray horizon fade into mist. The ocean had always calmed her, but tonight its restless tide mirrored her own turmoil. Behind her, Bill Spencer's voice carried through the room, low, angry, controlled only by sheer force of will. "You're not serious, Katie," he said, each word sharp as a blade. "Tell me you're not doing this." Katie didn't turn around. "I'm not doing this for her," she replied softly. "I'm doing it for the child. The child. Luna Nozawa's child. The newborn that had turned every buried wound in this family into an open scar. When Luna was first arrested, the world had already labeled her guilty. The manipulative designer who'd seduced her way into the Spencer legacy. The liar who had used youth and charm to get close to Will and to money. She had sworn that the baby she carried was innocent of her mistakes, but no one wanted to believe her. The city's tabloids fed on the story. The Spencers fed on anger. Only Katie had hesitated. Now, months later, Luna's fall from grace had become a national obsession. She had been sentenced, though appeals were ongoing. The baby, fragile, premature, had been born inside a correctional medical ward. It was the kind of beginning no child deserved, and for Katie, that was the point. No child deserved to start life as a bargaining chip. Bill didn't see it that way. For him, Luna's child wasn't innocent. It was a reminder, a living symbol of manipulation. To him, it was proof that weakness had consequences. Katie, on the other hand, saw something entirely different. She turned to face him, her expression calm but fierce. "Bill, that baby has no one. Luna's in prison. Her family disowned her. Are we really the kind of people who turn away because it's inconvenient?" Bill slammed his hand against the table, his voice rising. "Don't make this about morality, Katie. That woman used our son. She lied. She made a fool out of him, and out of you, if you think for 1 second that baby doesn't carry her poison." Katie's eyes filled with quiet fury. "That's not the baby's fault." The words hung between them, heavy and final. For a moment, neither spoke. Bill paced like a caged animal, his chest rising and falling with rage he couldn't quite articulate. Katie just watched him, the man she had loved for so long, the man she still understood better than anyone. She knew his anger was a mask. Beneath it lived guilt, shame, fear. He had built empires to prove he could control the uncontrollable, and now his world was being rewritten by something as small and defenseless as an infant. Will had been listening from a staircase, unseen. His hands trembled on the railing as his parents' words cut into him. He had been trying to make sense of everything for months, of how one impulsive night with Luna had detonated into scandal, how his name had become a hashtag for humiliation. He didn't blame the baby, not really. But he couldn't bear to look at it either. Every image of the newborn, every whisper about it being the Spencer heir from the wrong woman, scraped raw the shame he had tried so hard to bury. And Electra, poor Electra, had become collateral damage. She had stood by Will through the chaos, had defended him when the press tore him apart. But she was haunted by the same fear that Bill had voiced, that this baby would bind Will to Luna forever, that compassion would turn into connection, and connection into something deeper. She had tried to tell herself she was being irrational. But each time she saw the name Luna Nozawa Spencer trending online, something inside her hardened. Katie knew all of this. She saw it in Electra's eyes, in Will's silence, in Bill's fury. But she couldn't let their pain justify cruelty. "If no one steps in," she told Bill quietly, "that child ends up in the system. Passed from one foster home to another, growing up hearing its mother's name whispered like a curse. Do you really want that on your conscience?" Bill turned away. "You think adopting that baby makes you a savior? You think you can fix what she broke?" Katie stepped closer, her voice trembling with conviction. "No, Bill. I don't want to fix anything. I just don't want to be the kind of person who stands by and watches a child suffer because it's easier than forgiving its mother. Bill's expression shifted, not softening, but cracking. For the first time, he looked less like a man in control and more like a man terrified of losing what little order he had left. "You're going to destroy this family," he said finally. "You're going to tear us apart over a baby that isn't even yours." Katie's eyes shone. "Maybe," she whispered, "but at least I'll be able to look at myself in the mirror when it's over." When Katie filed the initial papers to petition for temporary guardianship, the media erupted. Headlines screamed betrayal. Katie Logan defies Bill Spencer, fights for child of scandal. The tabloids painted her as self-righteous, the public debated her sanity, and the Spencer PR team scrambled to contain the fallout. Bill's allies turned against her. He used every connection he had to block the case: lawyers, judges, social workers. He argued that Katie's involvement was emotional, reckless, and detrimental to her own family. But Katie had anticipated this. She had built her case not on sentiment but on law, on the undeniable fact that the child's best interest lay in stability, not stigma. The courtroom scenes were brutal. Luna's lawyer fought to retain maternal rights from behind bars, her testimony trembling with regret and pride. Bill's legal team painted Luna as dangerous and Katie as naive. But Katie's composure was her weapon. She spoke with quiet authority, describing how she had visited the child in foster care, how the baby responded to her voice, how even the nurses had begun calling her Aunt Katie. It was Will's testimony, though, that shifted everything. He sat before the judge, his hands clasped tightly. "I made mistakes," he said, "and I've spent every day since trying to make up for them. But my mother, she sees people for who they are, not what they've done. That baby deserves a chance to know someone like her." Katie wept silently. Bill didn't move. When the court granted her provisional guardianship, the shock rippled through Los Angeles. Katie became both hero and target, the woman who defied her ex-husband's empire to protect a child that wasn't hers. Overnight, she was recast in the public eye, not as the quiet Logan sister, not as the forgiving ex-wife, but as the last moral compass in a city that had lost its bearings. But victory came with a price. At home, the air between Katie and Bill turned poisonous. He barely spoke to her except through lawyers. When he did, his words dripped venom. "You've humiliated me," he spat during one late-night confrontation. "You've made me look weak, again." Katie met his fury with calm resolve. "If doing the right thing makes you look weak, then maybe you've forgotten what strength actually is." He didn't reply. He just stared at her, the woman who had once been his conscience, now his adversary. And for the first time, Katie realized something terrifying. Bill didn't just hate Luna. He hated that she had reminded him of his own sins, of the lives he had broken in his pursuit of dominance. Meanwhile, Will found himself trapped in a labyrinth of guilt and confusion. Every visit to the baby stirred something he couldn't name, tenderness mixed with pain. The infant's tiny fingers curling around his own reminded him of everything he'd lost, everything he still feared to face. Electra saw it too. Each time Will returned from Katie's house, she noticed the change in him, the quietness, the faraway look in his eyes. One night, she confronted him. "You can't keep doing this," she said, her voice breaking. "Every time you look at that baby, you're looking at her." Will tried to deny it, but the words wouldn't come. "It's not like that," he whispered. "Then what is it?" she asked, tears shining. "Because if you keep trying to save her ghost, you'll lose everything real, including me." The silence that followed was an answer neither wanted to hear. As weeks passed, Katie's connection to the child deepened. She named her Grace, for the one thing the world seemed to have forgotten. Grace became a symbol not just of redemption but of defiance. In Katie's arms, she wasn't Luna's mistake or the Spencer's scandal. She was simply a child, a second chance wrapped in innocence. But shadows lingered. Luna's appeals were gaining traction, and Bill's influence still loomed over every courtroom. When a private investigator leaked photos of Katie leaving the courthouse with Grace, the internet erupted again. Comments flooded social media, some praising her courage, others accusing her of stealing a mother's child. The pressure mounted, and Katie began receiving threats, anonymous calls, messages telling her to back off before you regret it. Still, she refused to yield. Her resolve only hardened when she discovered who was behind the harassment, a PR operative linked to Bill's own company. When she confronted him, Bill didn't deny it. "I did what I had to do," he said. "You're forcing my hand." Katie stared at him in disbelief. "You're destroying yourself," she whispered. "And for what?" "To erase a baby." Bill's expression twisted. "To protect my family." But Katie saw the truth. He wasn't protecting them. He was protecting his pride. The war reached its breaking point when Luna, granted a brief release for her final hearing, stood face to face with Katie for the first time since the birth. The courtroom was silent as the two women locked eyes, one a mother stripped of everything, the other a woman trying to give that loss meaning. "I never wanted to hurt him," Luna said softly, her voice trembling. "I just wanted my child to have a future." Katie nodded. "And she will. But that future can't come from hate." Luna's eyes filled with tears. "Then promise me one thing. Promise me she won't grow up hearing my name like a curse." Katie reached across the table, her hand trembling. "I promise." The judge's decision came hours later, joint guardianship. Luna would remain the legal mother, but custody would stay with Katie until her release. Bill stormed out before the ruling was finished. In the weeks that followed, Los Angeles seemed to hold its breath. The city that thrived on scandal found itself strangely humbled by a story that wasn't about power, but conscience. Forrester Creations offered Katie a new philanthropic position, expanding programs for at-risk mothers. Ridge, watching from the sidelines, told her quietly, "You remind this city what decency looks like." But at home, the fractures remained. Will struggled to rebuild trust with Electra, who loved him fiercely but feared the shadow Luna still cast. Bill withdrew into his empire, his heart hardening behind boardroom glass. And Katie, once again alone, but unbroken, found solace in Grace's laughter. Sometimes, late at night, she would stand by the same window overlooking the ocean, holding the sleeping child in her arms. She would think of Luna, still serving her time, still fighting her demons, and whisper, "You're forgiven." The waves outside would crash and retreat, relentless, eternal. And somewhere deep inside, Katie knew that her choice, impossible, defiant, human, had changed everything. She had lost Bill, perhaps forever. She had fractured her son's world. But she had also restored something larger than family or reputation. She had reminded the city that compassion was not